at a high level tells you the Engage Cloud platform, what hooks, what integration points exist. Then we'll go into each of the sessions where you get deeper dive, and then there's a hands-on session where if you want, you can also play with this stuff, right? So at a high level, the rationale is very simple. It is about the APIs. It is about the toolkits. So, some of those APIs, just like the old in the Engage Promise platform, there were platform SDKs, and there were higher level of abstraction that we did to make life a little easier. In this case, we have the lower level APIs. In some cases, we're going to bundle those APIs and add additional state machine. In some cases, like desktop, there will be widgets as well. So, you would have to, as developers or partners, understand which might be the better model for you. In some cases, you might want the flexibility of using something which is raw API, close to PSDK sort of architecture, a slightly different model, of course, with RESTful web services. In other cases, you might actually like to use those widgets and state machine bundled together, which gives you flexibility to build those desktop applications relatively quickly. So you will see different flavors and different abstraction of these APIs and integration points as well. At the same time, of course, it is about partner integration. On the PureEngage side, we were relatively slow in introducing the partners. There were multiple reasons for that. One of that was that the Engage platform was targeting high end of the customer base, and the security and scalability and other pieces were very important to them, and we take it very seriously, especially when large customers like one of them, you heard Whirlpool there. So we were very cognizant of the fact that we will open it up for partners when we are ready for that. So what has happened since last year is that we have 2 or 3 partners already engaged. We picked them up based on the capability that platform had, and also the gaps and applications that the platform needed. By end of this year, we should have at least 3 or 4 assets that are available. We are looking very strong on the Dynamics 365 based integration. But going forward, we're going to continue to provide those tools that are important for partners and developers to use the APIs, right? So, if you do not have an environment to play with the APIs, it's not helpful for you. If you cannot debug it, it's not helpful for you, right? So it's not just giving you access to the API. In the cloud model, you want the environment to play with it also, because in this case, you don't have a CD that you can install and play with an SDK. It's a different model completely. And then in this case, there are lots of servers and a lot of complexity because it is targeting a very high end of the customer base. There is one other element of this strategy, which is part of an open platform theme. At least I see it that way. It might not resonate with you guys depending on your background. One of the aspects of open platform is not just about APIs, integration and extension of out-of-the-box application. It is also about providing bundled services, which are more than an API. There's a set of functionality. This set of functionality can then be consumed outside of our platform, maybe in a hybrid manner, in an existing engaged customer, or maybe in tomorrow, maybe in a way where we could target brand new customers. What this also means is that this to developers and our partners, and even to our customers, gives a capability where you can learn about some of these services and how these services can be integrated with an environment that you have. And if you're a partner, you're a developer, you could probably take that functionality and add some other things around it and repackage it in some interesting ways. Actually, I just came from a hybrid session where we talked about Genesis Cloud Services. That's the model about which we have started to release now. There are already some services which are available in hybrid manner. Going forward, there will be more services that will be available. In this DevCon, we were not going to focus on those services, but by all means, if you are interested in that, we can, you can actually talk to us about it, and we'll tell you what we're doing there. Our focus is going to be on the API side, and certainly on the hooks and the partner assets and the use cases, which are ready for partners and developers to work on. So, lot of information in this slide. Maybe the font is not rendered properly, but what I wanted to say is that these are the set of APIs in Engage platform which are available today. So you will see there are workspace APIs, statistics APIs, provisioning APIs, the pieces of digital APIs as well that Murat and Pat will go into the detail, in the task routing APIs, some of the messaging APIs as well. You see the CX contact and some other pieces as well. So what's happening here is that we of course internally using an API and microservices-based architecture. Slowly, as we see fit, we are bundling those APIs with the right documentation, the right tools, and exposing that and making it available for developers to play with. This is a decent set of use cases that these APIs enable. I mean, if you look at the task routing one, it is also related to back office work item. It could actually be used for routing actually third-party email and chat and media. It's a hook, very powerful hook that this set of API enables. So some of those capabilities could be very interesting to see how the community will take it and then evolve and create more assets around the Engage platform. I want to briefly touch on desktop. Obviously, there's a very good desktop session that Rick Fang and the engineering team will run. I'd highly encourage you because it is going to talk about Workspace Web 9. But I wanted to give you one example where these APIs are not just something that you consume raw. This openness is also about taking an application as good as a desktop and extending it, right? Because we know our large customers pretty much never just take out of the box desktop as is. They always have functionality that they want to apply to that desktop, right? So in case of desktop, we have these client and services APIs. I think actually this one has a demo, which I'm going to skip because you're going to see this in the desktop session. What actually I'm very excited about is the capability where from that thin client desktop, you can trigger other web application. And the way you trigger those web application is that you can actually then use these client services API to synchronize some information back and forth. So everything that is written on the right-hand side is actually about, call control, agent control. Actually, last fall, we had a hackathon using PureEngage APIs in Toronto. There were probably 30 teams that not only participated, but actually presented after, about 48 hours long hackathon overnight. And these were, young college kids, mostly undergrad, but some of them were partners as well. They extensively use the Service Client API and even some of the AI stuff from Google and other things to stitch some things together. So different web application, but it allows capability to use Workspace Desktop, but extend it with other web applications with the APIs that can help to create an integrated environment, if you will. So, we will of course go into the detail, but I just wanted to give you an example of flexibility sort of built in an application that we are providing you out of the box. The desktop toolkit, or the Workspace toolkit, is actually one of the other very interesting extension of desktop itself. Toolkit is a perfect example where you are not getting the raw sort of APIs. You're actually getting higher level of abstraction, which has some code sort of pre-built, which has a UI widgets built in as well. So you could actually take the toolkit and then create that custom desktop application where you do get some advantage of the state machine and the code that we've already tested and we execute, so you don't have to worry about debugging that code, so you can get it up and running quickly. But at the same time, you could create this custom UI environment that is important for you or for your customers, or if you're developers for the companies that you work with. Similarly, there will be other applications as well which will allow customization, like chat and other things that Pat and Murat will talk about. So I think, this is an interesting one as well, which talks about the Workspace UI, but how there is different degree of complexity and flexibility built into the integration points, right? So you could choose to use the GWS Web Services API to build that integration point. You could pick the optional widgets, or you could take the Workspace Web UI sort of framework. So depending on which path you take, your complexity of the application might be slightly different. And this is, by the way, when we talk about APIs, there are different integration points. If you're aware of the old documentation that we talked about Engage, these integration points are on the desktop side, on the reporting side, on the interaction side. I mean, those are broadly three, but there are more. And they were all connected to different servers. For example, the customization that IVR server provides had its own sort of APIs. The customization that Stats server on top of the wallboard and real-time application that you could create at these different integration points. So obviously, depending on the use case, you will have different integration points and a different level of abstraction that we will have. Our goal with the new set of APIs for Engage, and that is why it is taking a little bit of time, is to ensure that it is not only the APIs, it has the right documentation, it has the right, the samples, and it has the supporting environment to make sure that you, developers, partners, are successful. I think that's why it is taking time from our side to push it out. But as I said, these APIs are already running in production. All of them are serving our large customers. They're very scalable. So when you get to play with some of these APIs, it might be new for you, but we are probably using it for 3 years already. So I think that is something that you have to keep in mind. But we do understand that if the documentation is lacking, it makes your life difficult. So I think that's the part that we need to continue to work on. Okay, I think with that, I'm going to pass it to Bill. Actually, there is one slide, but I'm one or two more, actually. Sorry about that. So that since I just ran with the other session, I'll pass it to Bill, but just say one simple thing. On the partner side, we do have a sandbox. We do have a voice sandbox. It is enabled with some capabilities. The sandbox has some limitations. We can't give hundreds of sandboxes out. So we are prioritizing, who could work with that sandbox. We will be in this situation for the next couple of months. But our goal is certainly to make sure that the environment has all the rich functionality that allow you different use cases, and you have easy to access sandbox also. So we are working on it. We appreciate your patience. We know that we've been slow, but there are lots of things here that you can already take advantage of. So with that, I'll pass it to Bill.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So good intro, but between Jim Crispino kind of highlighting a move from PSDK into a web services for our PureEngage platform. Getting an overview, one of the early pieces of PureEngage software to take advantage of RESTful APIs, of a new kind of web services interface, we call it GWS, Genesis Web Services. And it has a bunch of things it does. You've seen that it's underneath the agent desktop, but it does a bunch more. And it's it's been a leading part of our developer ecosystem in cloud. So I'm going to go through what's happened. Let me take just a poll. How many do we have here in the audience who have GWS 8.5, either running Agent Desktop 8.5 in cloud or on-prem? Okay, so good number. It had a lot of advantages. It was new in many ways. It has been out there. I think we officially released it about 2.5 years ago. Pretty good adoption, and it's been in our cloud. If I look at what's happening today, this year, we're looking at version 9 as a replacement, and we have some more details. Some of the big things it's going to bring. We have moved to, let's say, documenting towards a more modern developer portal. If you haven't gone, developer.genesiscloud.com, and it's kind of modern API documentation, libraries, tutorials, and we'll show some examples of that. We have a new developer console just rolling out. We've got some screenshots, especially in cloud. You need a way to look if you're developing an application. Something doesn't work, you get an error. This is a way to look at the appropriate logs, the responses, why isn't it working, and troubleshoot. The sandbox, we are working on a sandbox primarily focused on the partner side. And just if we have customers in the room, the reason is that in our cloud environment, if you are a cloud customer, you can use your tenant and you can segment it to a certain degree, and you can do development within your tenant. You can have test users. And so you kind of have a built-in ability to do some development. And so that's why when we talk here, we're talking about partners using the sandbox, because that's going to be the dedicated sandbox for that development. In 2020, there are some plans, and there are lots of ways we can integrate. Many integrations. Jim kind of captured even more than listed here. The last bullet point, maybe for me, on a very technical level, if you're familiar with the PSDK, we have the ability to do a lot of bulk events. So some of our CRM integrations in particular take a server-to-server side integration. That's not part of our offer with GWS 9 today or 8.5. So that's on the roadmap. for next year, kind of doing bulk integrations, bulk events, kind of optimizing. Looking at the architecture, GWS has what we would call aggregator services, and there are a few of them. The workspace service, it's what our workspace web application is built on top of, but it's aggregating across multiple other microservices. And if in the future we add other microservices, we can kind of have a nice front end for our APIs through the workspace service. In addition, you'll see the provisioning API represented up here by the agent setup service. And also, very important, the auth service. We are introducing a new auth model supporting OAuth internally and SAML integrations to identity providers. So, an example of the Developer Center portal, developer@genesiscloud.com, and this is what you're going to see. You're going to see all the APIs we've been referencing, but this is brand new within the last year. So, rolled out documentation. We have started, in a new model, we have started posting the examples on GitHub. So there are example applications, integrations available. Take advantage of them now. The developer console, troubleshooting logs. So like I mentioned, use case, you're developing something, especially in PureEngage Cloud, and you just don't have access to the underlying components. So the developer console is your way to filter, to look at interactions, calls, see what worked, what didn't. And then just what's rolling out here is the API key management. We previously had a model where you submit requests for us to manage the API keys, which is a little bit slow. It's a manual process for moves, adds, changes, deletes on any of those. This lets customers manage their own API keys. An example, what you can see, the tutorial, this is for the agent API. You know, this would be that most granular way of building a custom agent desktop. And it steps through overview like that. Last thing I'm going to cover is the auth. It is new. So in cloud, we have a new way of doing auth. One login across our supported applications in cloud. And in addition, integrating into identity providers, such as Okta, using the SAML 2.0. It will, what we've done before with LDAP, now we're going to recommend generally moving to this single sign-on with SAML. Last thing on-prem, you've got GWS 8.5 deployed on-prem. We have two kind of big changes for the technical folks. There was a sync node in Cassandra. We're moving to a couple new technologies. We are moving to a Docker container architecture. That is a big step for many of our customers, this being the first kind of, let's say, software they consume from a vendor having to deploy Docker, a little bit of a change. Moving to Redis is a different database, so a couple changes on the roadmap there. Pat.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Okay, so I'm Pat Mackey. I'm on the digital side for the product management team at Genesis. And I'm going to go through some of the changes we made on a new architecture we built for PureEngage Cloud to do digital. Right? So what we had been doing before is we had very similar architecture to what we had on-prem, and we moved it up in the cloud. And at this point, we took a step back and said, let's do it using the new architecture, and let's just start from scratch and build something that's all API-based, it's based on current web technologies. So that's what this is all about. It includes normalized JSON across the digital channels for rich media elements. You know, we're finding a lot of it's just the same between WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, across Apple Business Chat. They're all trying to handle JSON for rich media. Let's normalize it. We make it so our developers only have to build once, and it works across channels, right? So that's our goal here for the normalized JSON across the board. And if you look at it compared with the existing architecture on-prem, this would replace chat server, digital messaging server, bot gateway in this single component view. Provides a pathway for Designer to talk to third-party bots. This is what we're using to talk to Google Dialogflow and Amazon Lex and soon others. I think we could say that. And because this is new technology, we're looking at new customers to roll this out to. We have a migration plan coming, but we haven't really started the migrations yet. So if you're an existing customer who's on our PureEngage Cloud digital platform. Talk to your account team about how you get in the migration plan. Okay, so you're familiar that we used to just have chat, email, and co-browse for PureEngage Cloud. With the new architecture we launched, starting in Q4, async chat, we have mobile chat, so you can build a mobile app that communicates with your contact center through chat. We support WhatsApp, SMS, both for inbound and outbound, right, for CX contact. Facebook public and Twitter public, so typical social interactions, we can capture those, deliver them down to an agent. Facebook Messenger and Twitter direct messaging are more like chat channels over those two, so we do Facebook Messenger, which was a big ask a while back. Twitter direct messaging, of course, and then I mentioned chatbots, voice bots, and this also enables Alto Cloud. So we delivered a lot of channels, if you will, for PureEngage Cloud. Okay, so this is architecture. Definitely not an engineer. So what you see is a big box in the center of how we handle the digital channels. So what's coming into it, we've got Twitter, Facebook coming in through the hub. You're probably familiar with that if you're dealing with social or WhatsApp or so forth. And then on the side, we've got APIs to widgets, WhatsApp, SMS, and Open Media API. And those are all coming into the big box digital channels. It works through GWS to talk to Designer and Workspace Web down below. So GWS is, key ingredient here. And then it talks out to the database for contacts and history, and then interaction management, or, interaction server and so forth. Okay, so inside that box, we're dealing with the APIs. So we're writing all these APIs for the different channels to support them, of course. We do the normalization for the rich media. We do the session control to make sure things are, happening the way they should. And then we have an iframe UI, which we're going to get into a little bit, which is part of the magic that this came together so quickly. And what that iframe UI does is it appears in Workspace Web for a chat or for social. So we have a couple different flavors of it that show up down there. And that's how the iframe UI comes through. And at the top you see the bot APIs going out to Amazon. Okay, so the iframes, we added 2 new panels in Workspace Web for this new architecture. And what you see, let me try to use the laser here. Whoa, that's bright. Close your eyes. Okay, so on this side is the typical chat part. This is a new panel that's appearing here for you. Okay, so on the typical chat, as you probably knew, we weren't handling images very well on that yet, right? We also were giving you some other information and so forth. So that's all being added to the new iframe over here. So here we see the context of the conversation, and we will see a thumbnail of the images that were attached, and then you can click on it and see the larger image, in this case, from the Lion King. But so that's how that particular frame shows up. And if you go through it, this is the conversation frame. So that's, someone will click on that tab to open this up. It's saying that this is Facebook Messenger is the channel that it's dealing with. There's the image that we just talked about, and agent can message directly from the conversation panel or from the typical Workspace Web component. So you have an option of which way you go. Now you notice this one has the image icon, so you can attach an image over here. You can't do that over there. Okay, so this is one of the tricks we use to get this done so quickly. Now we have this communication panel, which is very similar. But what we do is every time an agent handles a interaction with a customer, we add them to that agent's list in this panel, the communications panel. And so you'll see a stack of all these people I've dealt with. And we use that very smartly, very intelligently when we do our last agent routing. So last agent routing is built in to all these channels in digital. So what happens is when they, actually, I'll build this thing out first. So this is the communication panel, so you can take a look at it anytime you need. Here's a list of those customers we talked about. Agent can select one of those customers has a new message in there. So you see this one's got a little dot next to it, so there's a new message in there. And they can see this end of the panel. I won't use a laser. So you'll see this one pop in for that particular person. So this is Avril that we're taking a look at here. And you see the conversation on top, the older conversation. So this is the async chat working here. So I can see previous messages that show up that are in the database, and then what's going on today starts down here. And I can send a message here even if I'm not on that conversation with that person right now. So the idea here is message comes in to continue the conversation from the consumer side. We'll see a little dot there. The agent can open it up at any time. Now also, if I want to send a follow-on message to that person, I can click on them in that panel and then type a message here. And that'll show up in the widget when they log into the widget next time. Or they'll show up on their mobile app. We built the mobile app to connect with chat. And that was that last part of the panel. Okay, so this is, sorry about that, but this is the flow chart for how that works, the last agent routing works. So we always look very quickly to see if that contact is in somebody's communication panel, and we route to them first. If not, it goes to the designer, and we route it to the best skilled agent who can handle it. Right? I'm not going to spend any time with this because we've got a little video that's coming up, which I think I'm going to need a little assistance with. So Murat's going to step up and assist. So what we got is Workspace Web on this side. We got a widget down there in the corner, and we got a user logging into the widget. When we say logging into the widget, they're just identifying themselves. They're not really logging in. And they're going to start a chat conversation up. And we'll see in the corner here the usual toast, accept and reject here from Workspace Web, right? Because this is a new conversation. That person is not in the communication panel. And we're seeing this is standard workspace right now. And we see that the person is typing the message. And we're going to expand it a little bit. And we get that message popping up. And we're going to see that the agent is going to open up the conversation panel. All right, so now I'm seeing kind of a different view of the conversation that's happening. And this is the first message that started the session. So there's no prior messages that are going to appear in that panel yet. Now, what we wanted to show here is that the chat session ends, or the interaction ends. The user clicked to end it on the widget, and the agent has one more thing he wants to say, right? So this is async chat, so the agent can continue the session even without the consumer being connected. One more thing, I didn't tell you how the thing works, so great follow-up message. Now when the user comes back, and they go to the website, I think that's the next step here. Oh, no, we're going to close the chat sessions. Chat session is done on our side as well, or the interaction is done. Here's the user going back to the widget. They're identifying themselves. Now what's happening here is we already have this person in the communication list for this particular agent. So what pops up here is a custom toast, right? That says dismiss and show. So it's a different couple options for the user. We're not actually using Designer to route it. We're doing our own last agent routing based on that communication panel. We deliver it to the agent, and now we pass the interaction over to the agent, and the agent can see the follow-up. So when the user connected to the widget, that's when they saw that prior message, and they can continue the conversation, all asynchronous. Right? Okay, so I think that's it for the video, in the interest of time. See if I can move on. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to Murat, who's going to walk us through some of the digital APIs, and I'm going to hand you the baton.
Thank you.
Sure.
So you've seen a similar slide when Deepak presented it. We just kind of broke it down about digital APIs that we've released, or about to be released. One of them is consumer messaging API. For a lot of users, it's basically our formal chat API. The ability for end customers to start a session, to continue a session, to view messages in it. It has support for mobile push notification, basically ability for you to integrate this API into a mobile app, and if the customer is not online, and when agent responds, be able to send a mobile push indicating to the customer if there is a new message waiting for you, and it supports async chat out of the box. We also have Genesis task routing APIs. Basically provide the ability to route third-party tasks, third-party emails, third-party chats There is a separate session tomorrow, which is going to talk more about this. So if you guys are interested, please do attend. And there is a new API that's actually coming out in 2019, and this is secure messaging APIs. So as you probably know, like a lot of financial institutions, banks, you can log into their site and communicate with the institution through that. Basically, the messages remain within the institution's framework. They never leave. They never go to your email provider. It just stays there. So we provided an API for you guys to integrate with this, where you'll be able to expose this onto your site. It's going to come into Genesis, and we're going to route it just like anything else. In addition to the API itself, some of you are familiar, but we also have Genesis widgets. So Genesis widget is a component that we allow our customers, you guys, to put onto your site, onto your website, which integrates to our APIs directly. So if you buy chat from us, if you buy secure messaging from us, this is the fastest way for you to get up and running. It's basically it's a streamlined GS application. It very easily integrates with your website. We now provide a way to actually host this by Genesis, and there are various ways of customizing it. You can use it out of the box. You can change UI on top of it, or if you want to build your own UI, there is a higher level JavaScript API as well that you can integrate directly and just build your custom UI 100%. It uses the same consumer messaging API that we talked about on the previous page. So again, we support different ways for you to integrate with Genesis. And the demo that we showed before was using Genesis widgets to show you how it works. Mobile chat. Again, the consumer messaging API, you can consume it either from the website or from a mobile application. The exact same API is used. The only difference is that if you're using for a mobile app, you're going to provide some additional information for us to identify and provide an ability to send mobile push with it. Mobile app is responsible for storing the session token. Mobile app does not need to store the entire message history. Before that was the use case. If you guys integrate with a mobile in 8.5 with chat, we kind of forced you guys to store the entire message history here. So we went away with that. And we provide a mobile push notification. Basically, if the agent replies back and the customer is not there, we send a very generic message that shows up on the phone, says, hey, please go and check, open an app, there is a message waiting for you. And again, it's very generic. We do not send the actual content of the message, because on the phone, mobile push gets displayed even if the phone is locked. We want to make sure that if the phone is left somewhere, the content of the actual message is not shown. We're going to briefly talk about bots, and I think there is another session about that. But basically, we use just Genesis Designer as an integration point. You probably have used Designer in the past to build routing for voice, for media. So this is an extension of the capability of what Designer provides. Right now, the currently supported platforms are Genesis Digital Dialog Engine, Google's Dialogflow, Amazon Lex, and we have plans to support Azure bots in 2019 as well. And this is basically a screenshot of how you would build a bot integration with Genesis Dialog Engine. And this is just talks more about the, how it works. And one of the other thing is that you can actually build an application within Designer itself, which can act as a bot. You can have it send messages. You can have it analyze responses, and based on that, just build a more intelligent routing application. And at the end, if the application logic determines that the agent is needed, the agent will get to see the entire history, the entire conversation of the consumer with the bot, so the agent will have, context of what happened in that conversation. Links to documentation. Again, it was covered in already a number of different slides, but this is just, again, you can talk, you can see about APIs, and some of the APIs, for example, for task routing API, we have also an overview of what the solution looks like and why you want to use it. And I believe this is the last slide. Questions? So I guess Pat and Bill, let's come over here and see if there are any questions. Deepak?
Yeah. You guys are wired.
Go ahead.
Is the Genesis Designer for bot integrations cloud only, or is that premise?
Deepak?
All right. I don't know, Pat, if you want to add. So we just had a session, and we're going to talk more about it going forward. So that folds into our hybrid or Genesis Cloud Services strategy for digital.
Okay.
Where let me describe that, and Pat could add more information, and we'll of course need to deep dive on this use cases going forward. So basically, what we're trying to do is try to bridge the best of both worlds, because we understand that the premise customer have lots of existing routing strategies. They want to keep their reporting and operational model on premise. So I think the rationale is that we will provide access to Designer, but the Designer itself is not installed on premise. You get access to it, and Pat, you can correct me. You get access to it, and you can write scripts, but those scripts will execute on premise. So that way, there will be one execution environment, one reporting, everything stays the same. It's just that maybe the rich messaging as a channel is coming in from the cloud with the capability of Designer. There will be blending possible as well. So you could create new scripts in Designer, and your blending logic could work. I think I'll keep it at that. But of course, more details needs to be. We need to talk about a lot more details on this.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned for mobile async chat that the mobile device is responsible for storing the chat token,
Correct.
session token.
Correct.
What about on the portal side?
Similar is that if you want to enable async chat on your site, you'd be responsible for storing the token and providing back. If you are planning to use our Genesis widget, you do have an integration point in there. There are two functions basically to retrieve the token, store somewhere, and then to pass it back into the widget so that it continues the same session.
So the token is the important part of authentication that we're actually connecting to the person we think we're connecting with. And so that's the idea, is having some sort of security over the over the token that you maintain. So you'll say they validated who they are. They have the rights to continue this conversation. Without that, we're just going to assume they claim they logged. I keep saying the term log in. They identify themselves in the widget as this person. We're going to assume they are, and we're going to continue to pass information to them with the assumption that that's who they are. The token gives us that a little more authentication. It's a better understanding that this is the person we're speaking to. So we may need to have that in hand in order to provide some more personal information on their account balance, for instance, or account numbers. So that's why that's done.
Go ahead.
Earlier you mentioned about a sandbox, and if I'm a customer and we would be able to just use our development environment and use partitioning, I get all that. But if I want to turn on additional features, is there a way that you guys can turn that on and us not deploy it to production? Or can we have a sandbox with all the additional features turned on?
Are you looking for like a trial of certain of digital? You don't have digital today.
It's something to play with. Yeah, we got the PureEngage cloud today. I want some additional features turned on. And I'd like just to have a sandbox with everything, or turn it on in my environment. That's fine too. You mentioned that, and it sounded interesting, so I thought I would ask.
Yeah, so for some of our customers, they do have that functionality, but it would be something that you should contact your CFM or your account executive, that they will work with us in a way we can do a free trial, for example. And in those cases, it will be, for some of the products, because it's new, it will probably be something that we would do PM manage. So that means that we will work with you, basically, in doing a lot of these products.
Yeah, so that would be like a staging environment. So currently, PureEngage does have a
strategy around that. That's what Human is referring to, that you talk to your reps and they could arrange something. But really, where we want to go is to continue to develop this sandbox capability. Right now, it has voice and a couple of things. We will continue to enhance it. The thing is that Engage is targeted for high end of the market with all the scale and security, so it's relatively more complex behind the scenes for us to spin it very quickly in environment. So we're trying to get the best balance to create a lightweight sandbox image, which could still do the things that you want it to do, but it might not be the complete tenant, if you will, in the cloud. So we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. I think in your case, you would have to have a scaling environment.
This GWS9, I saw there was something on authentication, authorization. So is that like changing? Right now, let's say we have SSO OAuth 1 authentication. Does it change anything there? The GWS9? Will it be backward compatible?
So which is the use case you're looking for? Where you have a kind of an application that's integrated with OAuth, or are you doing an like an identity provider? Which kind of
application integrated with OAuth.
Okay.
So as Bill mentioned, it does provide additional functionality. I don't believe that 8.5 provided OAuth 2, for example. No, I don't. This is new. So it's extending capabilities of what it can do. So I mean, the conception is the same thing. You know, OAuth, SAML, it works the exact same way. It just provides new capabilities.
So if you upgrade to GWS9, then the backward compatibility will be there, like 8.5.
So you'll need to take a look at the APIs. I mean, there might be some changes here and there, but the overall concept remains the same.
Okay. One more change I saw was the Cassandra and Sync node going away.
Correct.
So is it backward compatible or again?
So let me tackle that overall. So GWS 9, it offers similar functionality. So very similar to the auth answer is applicable across the board actually. So GWS 9, it's generally trying to have functional parity. APIs, syntax is a little bit different. So in all cases, it's not just a plug and play. Applications that are written against 8.5 need to have their syntax rewritten against 9. So, but it's similar functionality, so it's not a huge effort, but it's not backward compatible per se. In the same way with Cassandra and the Sync node, the architecture is different. When it becomes available both in the cloud and on premise, the idea is you would have both versions deployed in parallel for a certain amount of time. And so that does allow kind of trying out version 9, migrating while 8.5 stays in production. And that's our strategy, both cloud and on-prem. You have both deployed in parallel, but not backward compatible feature parity is better.
So once we upgrade to GWS9, then that's basically it. I mean, there's nothing. We have to change the application to use it.
It does need an update. That's right.
So you showed that GWS is moving away from Cassandra. Is that kind of foreshadowing of other Genesis applications moving away from
Not entirely. I think what we're doing is we're fine-tuning which database for which application. And I think in the GWS case, we found that Redis was a better fit for what we needed specifically. Other applications maintain the use of Cassandra, but it's evaluated on a per application basis.
Like UCS, for example, UCS 9.1 is still Cassandra based. That's the plan going forward.
is focused on Cassandra.
Yeah. It's all built around this.
And ORS will remain on Cassandra.
GMS, yeah. GMS is now GES in the cloud. GMS, the friend version will stay with us.
What about call recording? That was stay in Cassandra?
I don't know call. Do we have anybody in the back?
We can check that.
Other questions?
Just one more. So the digital framework's changing in the cloud. You know, will we expect changes on premise as well? Or is it just encapsulating what you know what's already there?
Yeah, I think for Prem, the current plan is continue with the architecture we currently have, continue to add innovation there. For the customers, as they transition to cloud or they want to move to cloud step by step, our plan is to offer a hybrid option for them. And that's how you would get this functionality on-prem, is through a hybrid path. But the current functionality will stay as is with some enhancements over time for Prem. So you can still continue with chat server, an SMS server, a digital messaging server on-prem.
So is that enhancement not going towards where you're going with the cloud?
It's this is the complicated step. So yeah, the idea is we're continuing to innovate on in the cloud to drive more customers to the cloud and to be the best cloud provider out there. We have huge base on-prem. Those customers need to be maintained, of course. They're going to have enhancements they need. There's going to be things that happen that need to be enhanced on the cloud. We're going to on-prem. We're going to continue both trains, if you will. So there's no plans to do a wholesale change there in the architecture.
So to add to what you're saying, though, so like a specific example, async chat.
Yeah.
Will that only be offered in the cloud for hybrid methodologies, or will you add it to the current methodologies on-prem?
Yeah, we added async chat. When was that? 2018.
2018. So on-prem async chat has been before we got to cloud.
Yeah.
It's not the same architecture, but the async chat is there.
Okay, so it's kind of a rewrite of the digital architecture in the cloud.
Right, a little bit more microservices, a little bit more modern technologies. That's what this is.
Yeah, but it's tuned specifically for the cloud.
Yeah, and we would certainly prefer to bring those innovation and better things that it is built for from cloud to premise if the customers are open to consuming it. That's how we prefer the function.
Do you have a timeline of this
So to some extent, for CX contact, right, it's
I didn't quite catch the question.
on-prem a timeline for GWS.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this. GWS 9 is available as a pre-release today, but pre-release means we need to get our feet wet a little bit. And one of the first deployments is with CX Contact. If you notice, the digital kind of depends on GWS. So does our new outbound solution, CX Contact, and it uses a subset. So the CX Contact deployments are actually the first to get that deployed on-prem. We're shooting end of the year for more availability with GWS 9 in a broader sense. What we found is that the first Docker installs we tried were a little bit heavier. And so we need, as an organization, to kind of, I'd say, ramp up our professional services. So we're not doing every customer with our engineering team. So that's probably the biggest hurdle, actually, is getting Docker installation smoother.
So is Docker going to be used as a delivery platform for other applications?
It will be. We have a set of 4, CX Contact and GWS. I think they're the 2 most prominent. Do you remember the other 2? Those are the 2 most prominent right now.
What was the question?
Asking about Docker applicability across the suite, and what parts of PureEngage will move to Docker. And there are 4, and off the top of my head, the ones I'm most familiar with are GWS and CX Contact. Those 2 are in Docker and have been deployed to customers. And the other 2, I just slipped my mind right now. GCXI. Included. So it's not going to be everything. We talked about it, but it's not going to be everything, but it will be select applications.
Go ahead.
In the demo, the customer uses a widget to get authenticated, but Genesis provides the authentication part, right? So third party?
So our authentication is built around the agent, not the end consumer.
Yeah, but in the widget, our need is we want to authenticate the customer in the portal and get the information about the customer to the agent, so we don't have to ask some authentication question. And would you plan to add some SAML integration in GMS so we can extract the token directly and push it in attached data or something?
I've heard some talk about pipeline that's it's going to be out there. I don't know about dates or priority-wise, but yeah, there has been a request from a number of customers to provide an ability to integrate with ADP of sorts.
It just talks for me. Okay. Another question regarding WWE. In 8.5, it doesn't support 2DN on the case. Version 9, will it support it?
It's a good question. Several requests, but right now we've modeled, let's say, the first instance of our deployment on 9 is cloud-based, which doesn't support it. So the 2 DMs per place is still on the roadmap.
Okay.
Well, there are no more questions. Thank you for attending.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, guys.